So, about a week ago, I did what some may now consider to be a mistake. And that I went to the VelocityConf website, and while I was there, I saw screenshots of past talks, and I went, oh crap, they're all dressed up. This is a fancy conference. He's wearing a blazer and she's in heels. This is a fancy conference. I'm speaking at a fancy conference. And usually I just wear jeans that have the least amount of holes in them. And if I do that at Velocity, they'll know I'm not a hashtag thought leader. I'm actually a hashtag gutter punk that spends her evenings judging constituents on Chopped while eating Star Wars mac and cheese. And good God, I have to dress up for this conference. So that's why I look like a thrift store vampire. After the talk, we can get photos, you can pretend you're staking me in the heart. Oh, we will laugh. But that's why this, and I got here and I was like, everyone's normal. So we'll see how well I operate this. Rockstars, builders, and janitors, thank you for coming. The actual tagline that's not on the slide is you're doing it wrong, because you are. If you'd like to complain at me in real time, my Twitter up there is @AliceGoldfuss. It's just my name. So once again, to prove that I am a thought leader and not a gutter punk, I'm going to open this up with some audience participation by asking a 3-part question. So you can digest it for a minute, and then I'm going to have you raise your hands when we get to the part that best describes you. I want to know what you've mainly been doing for the past 3 months for your company, what you're doing to get paid. So raise your hands if in the past 3 months you have mainly built new tools, systems, apps, features, new things for your company. Raise your hand. Okay, cool, thank you. Now raise your hand if you have mostly hardened or scaled or tuned existing things for your company. Okay? And lastly, raise your hand if you've mostly cleaned up, band-aided, documented existing parts of your company. Yep, okay, cool. So, congratulations, you're all part of the problem. But we're gonna talk about that today. We're gonna get through this together. Speaking about getting through it together, I'm Alice, and I am a site reliability engineer at New Relic, which means that I am a professional worrier with sudo access. As for New Relic, does anyone here not know what New Relic is? Like, I can forward your email to our sales reps, like, no problem. Like, okay, gonna skip that slide. So in this talk, we're gonna do 3 main things. We are going to define these roles, the Rockstar, builder, and the janitor. We're gonna examine the current environment and ecosystem of tech and how people actually are working. And then we're gonna discuss a better way of working, a better way of doing this. So let's start right off with these definitions with the Rockstar. Now, currently, Rockstar has a pretty bad meaning in tech, pretty toxic. And I don't really mean this in that way, although these certain types of Rockstars can become that bad kind of Rockstar if given enough unchecked, blind support from their company and enough visibility. But for the purposes of this talk, a Rockstar is the person that is building new things and gets the most credit and is kind of just always the star of that org or that team or that engineering district, whatever. You know these people, you know who they are. And Rockstars are really good because Rockstars are what your company is there for. Rockstars push the envelope. They put out new things, they develop new features, they get new ideas. And they're really good at that. They're very curious and open-minded, and they're really good at iterating fast. They're really good at spinning up a demo and then being like, oh, that didn't really work, but oh, they just released, 0.6, so I'm gonna roll that out now. That's great. And they're always looking to the next thing, to the next horizon. Rockstars are what get us excited about our jobs and our industry. But it's not all great. Because a Rockstar is always doing new things, that's all they really care about. And they're not very good at long-term maintenance, or understanding the consequences of their actions and of their code, and that end user experience. They're always just standing up something new and leaving it. A Rockstar is the person that comes to your meetings on Monday and says, hey, look at this thing I stood up over the weekend. Hacker News said it was awesome. And a Rockstar is also the person where when you come to them 6 months later and say, hey, this thing is like super shitty, they're going, oh, that's weird. Well, I'm just gonna build a new thing instead. I'm gonna fix it. I did have a new cool thing, let's just do that instead. So we can't always have Rockstars all the time. They need to be sort of supported by other roles. such as the builder. When we think of builders and infrastructure and stuff like that, we want to think something like ops. But there are builders in every role on every team, in every way of life. And builders are really important. Builders have a lot of strengths to them. Builders understand scale and reliability and consequence. Builders are the ones looking at the things the Rockstars rolled out and going, well, what if that instead? And oh, here's a weakness there. And let's strengthen this and let's scale this. Builders take that spark of a project and make it viable. Builders are very important. But builders, by themselves, are not always great. Because builders are also your resident doomsayers. Builders slow you down. Builders are the ones in the meetings going, okay. All right, so what if, I know we fixed the other 5 bugs, but what if this other one breaks? And what if we get alerted, but our alerting system is down, and the secondary alerting system I set up is also down, and we don't have a third one? What then? We cannot push this out. Can't. They're like this stop energy that keeps interesting things from moving, and they're super important, but they also just by themselves bog down the entire project. So you can't just be a builder, can't go it alone. And last but certainly not least is the janitor, and they are certainly not least. By the way, some people might look at this and say, well, why not custodian? Why not steward? Why janitor? Well, custodian and steward kind of denotes some sense of ownership and power. And the people doing janitorial tasks do not feel they have any power or control and identify themselves as janitors and janitors only. So this is the janitor role. And the janitors are the reason your business is still running. They are the reasons you are still here. You just don't know it. They're the ones in the backgrounds dealing with that 3 a.m. bullshit you pushed out. That is your janitors. And janitors have a lot of strengths because they understand the weaknesses in your system because they have to fix them all the time. But since they don't get a lot of resources or support, they understand how to do a lot with very little. They're really good at Band-Aids. They're really good at that last-minute fix. They're really good at understanding how this thing falling over is going to affect that thing. They understand those cracks in between that either the Rockstar or the builder thought about. But being a janitor all the time also brings with it some weaknesses. They can often resort to doing things manually instead of automating or scripting it. I mean, if they're always firefighting all the time, they don't have time to actually take a step back and think, whoa, maybe there's a better way of doing this, a better way of deploying this. They're just like, okay, fine, just SSH into the box and change that file and turn off Puppet and we're done. And that's, yeah. I've never done that. I'm giving the talk, I do everything right. So that is the janitor way of life, and they often get stuck down in the weeds because they're dealing with the minutia. They're dealing with that tiny config change that broke. They don't think like, why are we even using this config anymore? Half the settings in it we don't even recognize. They're just like, just change that one config and get out. And they're also really resistant to change, which I mean makes sense because every time something changes, it breaks and they have to deal with it. So they're the person in the back of the room going, why? We've always done it this way. Let's just keep doing it this way. So can't be a janitor all on your own. And we've built up this ecosystem of Rockstars, builders, and janitors, and they have decreasing visibility as you go down. In fact, as I've been talking about these roles, you can probably identify Rockstars on your team or in your company, but you're probably less good at identifying the builders or the janitors unless you yourselves are that person, right? They don't really get the same visibility and recognition. Although, interestingly, the amount of thankless work they have to do is indirectly proportional to the visibility. It rolls downhill, as they say. It rolls down the deploy to the janitor. So the janitor is just scooping up things without any thanks, without any visibility. And we're all just sort of fine with this. It's like a social contract we all just silently got into and went like, well, that's what we do now. But there's also people being like, well, these are just what people do. It's like organic. They kind of felt it this way. Isn't organic good, Alice? Like, don't we like organic? I mean, you live in Portland. That's certainly, you're a hipster now. Organic's the way to go, right? Organic's good. Well, in this case, I'm going to be on the side of the GMOs, which stands for greater mobility, okay? Because when people get into these organic roles, two things happen. They get stuck. They might have first started taking on this role because it really interested them. Or they took on this role because there was a need and they fulfilled it. And now it's just like, Shauna loves dealing with shitty things. She loves it, and she's so good at it. Why would we have her do anything else or have anyone else do her job? Shauna is the person to go to. She loves it. And Shauna doesn't love it anymore, but Shauna doesn't know what to do. The other thing that happens is they get tunnel vision. If you're only worried about pushing out new things, if you're only worried about scaling those things, if you're only worried about cleaning up after those things, you kind of get this insular sense, like, this is my kingdom, everything the light touches is mine, and you don't care about anything else, and you don't care about what you throw over the wall or the consequences of your actions. You're only trying to protect yours with walls, and so you don't actually look over and see what your coworkers or your other teammates are working on. That is also bad. Which brings us to the current state of tech. I mean, I have all these ideas about how people are functioning on their teams and in companies, but that might not actually be true. And I thought to myself, what am I going to do? How am I going to prove that this is actually a problem? Well, whenever I have an existential crisis, I immediately take it to Twitter. So that's what I did here. I said, hey, please take this Google survey, and I asked people the same thing along the same lines of what I asked you at the beginning, which is, in the past 3 months, what sort of work have you mainly been doing? But also, what sort of work do you want to be doing? What is your role in your company? How long have you been there? How happy are you? Do you think things are fair? And I got about 117 responses, which, I mean, the PagerDuty talk this morning said they got like 670, so I'm like 1/6 PagerDuty. It's not bad. I wouldn't consider this statistically significant given the size of our industry, but it does talk about some really interesting trends, points to some things that I'd like to discuss anyway. So first of all, about 47%, 48% of the people are currently doing what we consider rockstar work. They're currently making new things, mainly. That's pretty interesting. And a little bit more of that, 55%, actually want to be doing that work. They're not currently building new things, but that's what they want to do with most of their time. That makes sense. I mean, I was honestly a little surprised that it was not more than about 50%, but about 50% of people are doing that work. A little more than 50% actually want to be doing that work. As for that scaling work, that hardening work, that building work, about 20% of people are actually doing it. About 20% of people are actually looking at their existing systems and going, what can I do better? Only about 20. However, about 35% of people actually want to be doing that work. So they're currently not doing it. They want to be hardening and scaling and performance tuning, but for whatever reason, they're not. And interestingly, or perhaps not interestingly, about 32% of the people are currently janitors. They are currently cleaning up things. They are currently fixing little bug fixes. They are currently documenting things for existing systems that people decided to tap something onto, and now it broke, and now someone that got paid actually wrote a run book on it. That's what about 32% of you are doing. But only about 9.5% of you actually want to be doing that. So currently, we look like this. Actually, a large majority of people are doing rockstar work. They're making new things. A disproportionate amount, kind of a disappointing amount of people are doing the builder tasks. They're actually taking those already existing things and making them better. And over 30% of you are cleaning up all those little mistakes, all those little spiders. And this is where people want to be. They want to be doing a little more rockstar work. They definitely want to be doing more hardening work, more builder work, and they definitely don't want to be doing rockstar work or janitor work. So I looked at this and I thought, I also asked people what kind of roles they had in their company, and I wondered if that correlated with any of the work people were currently doing. Perhaps it comes as no surprise that 70% of the people doing rockstar work are developers. Developers are known to make new things every now and then, so I guess that makes sense. About 70% of them. And 58% of the people doing janitor work identify as ops, which I think is kind of the circle of life we've all gotten used to. Developers push out new things, operations patch them up at 3 a.m. We know this story. Interestingly, though, 54% of that 20% of builders, the people actually doing the hardening of the systems are developers. I never would have guessed that. But the people that are actually trying to harden their code and their systems most of the time are developers. But the people who want to be builders, majority of the time, are ops. So 70% are Rockstar devs, 54% are builder devs, and 58% are janitor ops. But ops wants to be doing builder work. One of the most interesting things I collected was whether or not you think the work distribution on your team and company is fair, as defined in the survey. So do you think that other people are getting to do cooler things than you and it's being handed out fairly? About 26% of you think that it's unfair on your team, which is actually pretty good. 74% of you think, hey, my team is pretty solid, it's pretty equal, it's not like I'm always getting stuck in the corner while they're doing cool work. Like, I feel okay on my team. However, 49% of you think that the work distribution in your company is unfair. So there is some unrest. People are not getting to do the work that they want to do. People are, it's like that picture of the person with the unicorn poop. Like, that's what's going on under the covers in your company and you don't know it. So what can we do? How can companies try to address this imbalance and these hard feelings? Well, since a lot of the times companies are focused on pushing out new things, one thing companies try to do is focus on reliability and make that a first-class citizen alongside your other products. They say, okay, we're always doing new things. Now we're going to do not new things. We're going to improve what we already have, focus on reliability and stability. The problem with this is that most people think of reliability and stability as just not changing anything ever. And that's fun for like 2 quarters, but then you don't have anything new to offer your shareholders or your customers, and then people are just like, you know what, that was cute, but we're done now, and we're going to start making new things again. Thanks. So you go back to the status quo. Another thing people have tried to do is rotate teams. They say, all right, so this team right now is going to build new things, but then eventually the entire team is going to go and maintain things, and then the entire team is going to go clean up things. And that's okay at first. But due to team makeup, the people on the teams, the different things they're good at, someone's going to look at a spreadsheet and go like, these teams are better at this work, and these teams are better at this other kind of work. And why aren't we just doing that all the time? That's efficiency. I wear a suit. And so once again, you get back to the status quo. So where can we go from here? What can we do? How can we make sure that people are happy and getting exposed to the kind of work they want to be doing instead of the kind of work they signed up to do, where Sean is at the meeting going, yeah, fine. How do we prevent that from happening? Well, naturally, we turn to Ursula Le Guin. Ursula Le Guin, for those of you who don't know, is a famous science fiction and fantasy author. She actually lives in Portland. One time I went to go see her talk, and the first thing she did was open it up by going, I want to leave soon because Downton Abbey is on. And I was like, yes, I am here for you, Ursula. In 1969, Ursula Le Guin wrote and published a very famous novel now called The Left Hand of Darkness. And The Left Hand of Darkness is at some indeterminate amount of time in the future and deals with a planet of genetically modified humans that are, for the most of their lives, androgynous. They have no sexual characteristics. And once a month, they enter a state called Kemmer, where they take on either male or female characteristics and they mate. But they cannot determine who is going to take on which characteristics. And that means that their society is pretty interesting. No physiological habit is established, and the mother of several children may be the father of several more. So they share different roles, they share different burdens. Which as a society means that burden and privilege are shared out pretty equally. Everybody has the same risk to run or the choice to make. Everyone has socially the same benefits and the same burdens, which means they all kind of work together to make the burdens not so terrible. So how can we apply this to our problem? Well, we can have everyone do everything. Now you might be thinking like, whoa, wait a minute. Hold the phone, Goldfuss. I did not come here for some hashtag serverless, hashtag no-ops shenanigans. This is Velocity, not DevOps Days, crazy town, okay? Do you even know how big my company is? We are big. We are a sponsor of this conference, and everyone is specialized, and everyone is big, and we're spread out a bunch of different cities, and I don't want everyone to be doing everything at all, because that likes chaos. I don't want my devs touching my chef code. They don't even know what that is. They think someone was going to cook them a private meal. I don't want my ops people touching my dev code, because all they do is make fun of Ruby anyway, and it hurts my feelings. I don't want everyone doing everything. Well, that's not what this is. But within every team, there is Rockstar, Builder, and Janitor types of work. And if you let people do that different types of work, if you enable them to do it, then 3 really great things happen. First of all, the blinders come off. People are no longer just concentrating on their specific slice of the life cycle of the ecosystem of your application. It's no longer just like, okay, don't deploy anything new, or hey, I built this really new thing, here you go. They suddenly are just like, oh wait, crap, I have to deal with the consequences of my actions now. What I deploy today, I have to scale tomorrow. Which means that they build better. They build defensively. They code defensively so they don't get paged. And they build more flexible and adaptive systems that are easier to reconfigure down the line because they're going to be the person reconfiguring them. So they make better systems overall. And they also foster new skills. I mean, there are probably people on your team that could build something great, or have opinions on how to build it out, or have been dealing with things, or want to actually clean up the code because they think it would make them a better engineer. But they're not going to know that unless you allow them to do it. And this is super important for junior engineers as well. Because junior engineers are on your team. They don't have a lot of exposure to different things. They're there for like a year, and people are like, so what do you want to specialize in? They don't know, because they haven't had the chance to do everything. So it's a great way to kind of find that diamond in the rough on your team and let people have all those experiences. And the other side of things, as you're growing people into senior and lead engineers, they have to know how everything works. They have to be both broad and deep. And they're not going to get either of those if they're just focused on always making new things or just focused on scaling them out. You got to make sure they're exposed to everything. So, how do we make sure that everyone is exposed to everything? Well, we rotate. And you can do it by the week. And you might be like, well, wait a minute. A week isn't really enough time to make a new thing. Okay, fine. Doesn't have to be just a week. But for example, let's say you have 4 engineers on your team. Split them up by a week. That's 1 week doing janitor stuff, 1 week doing builder stuff, and 2 weeks being a rockstar. And I think you should coordinate this with the on-call rotation, and I think everyone should be on call. And have the first week be the on-call work and the janitor work, because then they're getting paged by broken things, and they're probably doing Band-Aids because they don't want to get paged anymore that night. And those kind of marry very well. And then the next week, they will be scaling and hardening the systems they got paged on. Empower them to never get paged again for the same thing. And they will be very happy to take care of that for you, especially when they know the pager's coming around again. And then allow them 2 weeks to make something new, to add something new to your ecosystem or to your product, after they know ahead of time that eventually they're going to get paged by that thing again. So this comes out to looking like this balance, where we've got about 50% Rockstar, 25% Builder, and 25% Janitor, which looks pretty similar to the preferred state of the survey. And you might look at this and say, okay, Alice, well, like the janitor role, people only want to do like 9.5% of that, not 25. Well, sure. But as you do better Rockstar coding and you build better systems, you will have to do less and less janitor work, but you have to start somewhere. And if you find yourself that you need more time for builder and janitor roles, more than 1 engineer per week, then you, my friend, have technical debt. And you need to deal with that. You need to take your entire team off making new things and put them on the systems that need them most. They need to be doing that janitor work and they need to be doing that builder work, all of them. And for those of you saying, but what about my velocity? What about my vroom vroom? What about my go fast machine? I gotta make new things, I gotta bring in the monies, I wear a suit. Well, things actually go a lot faster when they're not on fire. And addressing that technical debt is key to productivity. And you might be like, yeah, that sounds nice, but how can I actually prove that to the executives and the muckety-mucks? How can I actually show them numbers? Well, it turns out that you can. There was a white paper in 2014 that came out called A Simulation Study of Practical Methods for Technical Debt Management and Agile Software Development. Just rolls off the tongue. There are formulas in that paper. This is one that was adapted by Gregor Wikstrand, and you can actually read through that white paper, and you can measure your system and your code and apply it to this formula, and then you can come to the muckety-mucks and say, hey, this is how fast we can go if we get rid of our technical debt. And if you want a more specific use case, well, take on Telefonica, one of the largest IT and telecommunications companies in Spain. In 2013, their CIO decided that there was a ton of debt in the company, money debt, and the CIO decided to combat that by combating technical debt. And they decommissioned over 1,100 applications in 2013 alone, and they reduced the systems used by 7,000 to 4,200 in the next 3 years. He also did things like using off-the-shelf solutions instead of making people in-house build them, so that freed up engineering time to build new things and cut down on those redundant systems in the first place. And all that work resulted in reducing their money debt by 14 billion euros. This is a real thing. So, okay, fine, Goldfuss, fine. Where should I start if I want to roll out your little Rockstar thing? Well, the first thing you should do is roll it out on your ops teams. Your ops teams are usually understaffed and underappreciated and always under the gun. They've been down in the guts of your company for years, and they've had little opportunity to improve it. As you remember, about 58% of them are doing janitor roles. So roll it on your ops team first. They understand the concept of being a janitor, and they understand that they want to be a builder. They've never really had the chance to be a rock star before because they've been firefighting this whole time. You really have to let them actually make new things and put them out there and start the rotation here first so they feel appreciated. Give them some room to breathe. And if you might be thinking like, well, wait a minute, okay, ops has more garbage than anyone to deal with. They should be doing janitor tasks full time. I'm only going to say this once. Don't punish your ops team for your dev team's shitty code. Ops doesn't happen in a vacuum. That shit that's breaking all the time, your devs put there. They built that, and ops is supporting it. And it turns out that great code your devs pushed out 2 years ago isn't as scalable and resilient as you think it is, and ops has been silently dealing with that this whole time. So yes, roll it out on ops first, and you roll it out by getting your operations people in a room and asking them 3 questions. What are you worried about? What keeps you up at night? What is about to fail? What's something you band-aided and didn't tell me or the rest of your team about? What is smoldering? What's going to explode? What is the next outage around the corner that no one has been listening to you about? What's something that you set up 5 years ago and no one's touched ever since, and it's the single point of failure legacy bullshit, and it's going to explode anytime now, and only you know it? What are you worried about? That is how you get your janitor tasks. Then ask them, what could we do better? What did we push out the door at 80% done and maybe now needs tests and like a backup system and monitoring? What could we improve there? Everyone knows what that's like. What could run faster? What could run quicker? What needs to be scaled? Or what needs to be re-architected? What did a Rockstar roll out in our system before it even hit 1.0 and now there's like 2 new APIs to take care of? What needs to be upgraded? That's how you get your builder tasks. And lastly, what do you want to add? What excites you in your industry, in the ops space? What cool talks have you seen? What cool GitHub projects have you looked at? What do you play around with at home in your spare time? What do you wish you could tell your friends you actually did here? That is how you get your Rockstar tasks. make them into tickets, whatever ticket system you like, start the rotation, and start out those tickets with the people that suggested them because they're going to be the passionate ones, the ones that'll get those things done out the door. Now you may think, Alice, if I take some of my ops team and make them rock stars some of the time, won't that create upstream pressure on developing? Good. Devs need to feel the consequences of their actions. They need to understand that there is an extreme amount of backlog that they have been shoving against ops for provisioning requests, for scaling requests, for config requests, and ops team has been silently churning on it this whole time. They need to understand the pain. They need to understand that things are going to be a little slower now because their code sucks. And they also need to understand there's a new process in town, and it's going to be hitting them next. And a great way to introduce that is for them to talk to an ops person and be like, why don't I have this thing yet? And then being like, I'm a rock star this week, sorry, I'm coding new things. And if you're thinking, oh, my developing teams don't have access to the infrastructure their code runs on, they can't be builders. They can barely be janitors. That's ops work. They can't do improving things. Well, I assure you, there is plenty to do at home. I think it's kind of obvious to some people what sort of tasks a rock star might look like on a dev team. But those be like new features and tools. Researching new projects is big. Empowering someone like, hey, for the next 2 weeks, we're relying on you to look at what new cool things we could do for our team. This is a junior engineer. That's incredibly terrifying and also incredibly empowering. Letting them know that you trust them because you hired them and you think they're a smart person. Letting them know that they could bring new things to the table. That's really good. Builder tasks on a dev team has a lot to do with testing. Performance testing, load testing, penetration testing, work with your security team. Improve the service resiliency and understand the greater impact. Your builders, when they are builders during that rotation, should understand what other teams are using your services and where those dependencies lie. They should understand, hey, we can't just end of life this because this team is actually using that API endpoint and we didn't know. They should understand the greater impact of their code throughout your company. And then your janitor tasks are things like bug fixes and refactoring. The things the support team has been getting hammered on by your product, those are things your janitor are going to take care of this week. Again, they're a developer, they helped write it probably, now they can fix it up, now they can clean it up. That is your janitor tasks. And you also want to ask them the same questions they ask your ops team. So what are you worried about? What did we push out too fast because we had a deadline on our roadmap? What bug really needs to be addressed because we have like 50 support tickets on it and Alice is starting to make fun of us on Twitter? What part of our tooling has decayed from the inside out? Like, what do we really need to address as a development team? That's how you get your janitor tasks. What could we do better? What needs to be revisited where we slammed it out over 2 days and it's been working so far, but it could really be strengthened and hardened? What new tests can we write? How's our logging? If something fails, does it just literally give like the shrug emoticon because you never actually expect it to fail and then a customer actually hits that code path? And then it comes with the developers and they're like, that's funny, I have no idea what happened. How is your logging? What needs to be rewritten? What needs to be end of life because something new is coming down the pipeline or something new should come down the pipeline? Those are your builder tasks. And lastly, what do you want to add? Aside from the features, what your product manager has put on your roadmap, is there some sort of new automation or tooling we can put into our deploy jobs? Is there some other language or platform you're really interested in, like Erlang? Oh, what's that? Is there something new you want to be putting out there? Those are your Rockstar tasks. And for those of you thinking, oh, I'm kind of worried, I mean, I don't really want to tell my developers that they have to do these janitor tasks now. Well, remember, they were already doing them. There was someone on your team already doing these bug fixes and these refactoring and these tiny additions, these tiny tweaks. They just weren't getting visibility and recognition for it. They're already doing it. Now everyone can do it. So in this talk, we defined our roles. We talked about the rockstar, the builder, and the janitor, and the strengths and weaknesses in each, and how they tend to work together and work rolls downhill, and rockstars get more visibility, but janitors hold your stuff together. We talked about the current environment through a very scientific survey. We talked about how this is our current state, where about 50% of people are doing rockstar roles, 20% are building out, and 30% are caught up doing janitor tasks. And we also talked about how people don't want to be doing that work. They still want to be doing Rockstar work. They still want to be doing builder work, but they don't want to be doing so much janitor work. And last but not least, we thought about how we could be doing things a better way with our friend Ursula Le Guin, and how everyone should be able to do everything in a rotation so they can understand the consequences of their actions and build overall better code and better systems. So eventually, the next time I'm here and I have you raise your hands, I want it to look a little more like this, okay? Thank you very much.
I guess we have to stop clapping long enough to, tell you how wonderful that was and therapeutic. And everyone wants to clap some more. And I didn't even ask you ahead of time if we would have a minute or two for questions if you wanted to try. All right, wonderful. Show of hands, raise your hand if you would like me to run the mic to you so that you can ask the question and it can be on the video. Yes, questions, not comments.
No one has questions because I said everything correctly. Or they're angrily tweeting about it and they don't want to talk. It's fine.
All right.
Okay? No questions?
We do have one.
Oh, okay.
This was an awesome session. So how do you get over the culture hump, where you get them to do this, to go with this? I'm going through this, and it's the hardest part where people just push back.
Hard. It is so hard, and really what you need is the authority from on high. You need a manager, you need a director being sold on the idea that this is correct, which is why I included that case study thing, because I know the hardest part, as an individual contributor, it's well, of course this makes sense. Of course it would make my life easier, but you need to be able to convince the people that manage those spreadsheets that wear those suits. And so, yeah, it's really hard without getting help. I mean, you can try and do some sort of grassroots thing with the other people on your team and be even starting out with pairings, hey, you're building that new thing, can I pair with you? If you're not usually the person that gets to build new things. Or, hey, this deploy is broken, why don't I show you how to make this? You can also throw around that fun word, the bus factor. Managers know that word now. And you could be the bus factor on this is 1, and I've been feeling really sick. To try and get some of that going. But yeah, it is hard, I'm not gonna lie, and it's way easier when it's a smaller company and you roll this out from the get-go. I think one of the easiest things you can do at first is making sure that everyone is on call in a rotation. Just that one small change gets people thinking, because suddenly they're getting paged for things and they don't want to. So even just that one small change, really the Rockstar and the janitor task, if you can get that going, you'll be in a pretty good shape. Anyone else? Oh, right.
Hey there.
Hello.
Fantastic talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Try to
thank
phrase
you.
a question. So I guess my question is, it seems like, in my experience, what the janitor work is often pretty obvious for everybody, because it's the stuff that's creating pain for everybody, users and developers alike. And the builder stuff might vary a little more. Some people think that pieces are shakier in one direction or shakier in the other one. But what something is a Rockstar task seems like it might vary a little more person to person, as what's the ooh shiny squirrel thing to them?
Yep.
So how would you think that a group in this sort of model would figure out, okay, it's Rockstar week. Where's the Rockstar backlog coming from, or who's deciding what the top of the Rockstar list is?
Sure, that's a good question. So it comes from getting them all in the same room and asking them those 3 questions, what are you worried about, what do you want to add? And since everyone is going to be a Rockstar, that means everyone gets a vote about what a Rockstar task actually is and what's important. And that's where you get that backlog from, if people can start working on them. And you can still have vetoes, because, especially if you're just a pure development team, you're already making new things. The Rockstar stuff is kind of taken care of, less so on an ops team, which is why you kind of have to force it from both sides. Developers don't necessarily get forced to do janitor work. Ops people don't necessarily get the opportunity to do Rockstar work, which is why you need to have those concrete roles. But on development team, are you dev, ops? Do you have a...
Product manager.
Okay, cool. Product manager, perfect. So you are helping to define what the Rockstar task is already. You're helping them make something new. And I mean, yes, you're kind of like, the Deus Ex Machina coming down being like, hey, this is what you're making, not that new shiny thing. But balancing it out with allowing them to do tooling helps them out. But yeah, I would get them in a room together and have them all talk about it. If you have a pretty good working together team, they're probably already sharing articles or discussions at lunch, what they want to do anyway. So there's probably at least, like a 2-4 split, like 2 people really want to do something. And yeah, they might have to write a proposal about why this would be good, why they're spending Rockstar time, switching from Jenkins to Travis instead of building the actual product. Those are things that need to be discussed, but definitely get people together, let them decide. They build up those tasks, and then they pop them off the top.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, we're out of time, but Alice, that was amazing. So one more round of applause for Alice, please.
Thank you.